The Lloyd's market must be seeing claims coming from all kinds of parts of the global economy. How does it leave you positioned and those who operate at Lloyd's positioned?
Well, good morning. Yes, I mean, these events are, of course, shocking, and I think it's quite embarrassing to be a European to see that we've got yet another war on our continent. In terms of its impact on the insurance market, relatively muted on a direct basis. Less than 1% of Lloyd's revenues come out of either Ukraine, Belarus or Russia itself. So the issues are mostly second-order risks for us, and you alluded to aviation there a moment ago. Clearly, there are big fleets of Boeing and Airbus jets that are leased mostly by Irish companies to Russian airlines. And so those have been impounded. And as an example, we then move from understanding what the asset values of those aircraft are to what the exposures are for the insurance industry, and then, of course, down to what the losses will be. And of course, it's relatively complicated because different risks are covered by different insurers. So hull risks are different from engine risks, are different from the risks of the airline itself. And then, of course, some risks kick out when war occurs. There's a cancellation event when a war occurs, and other risks kick in. It's also multifaceted, so there are specifically issues around political violence, of which this is clearly an example. There are credit flows in terms of the insurance of credit payments across borders. So we're still evaluating all of that, and quite hard to put a number on that. I think we will have a number for Lloyd's exposures by the end of May, and most companies will have to be thinking about what provisions they're putting up for their half-year results.
OK, so it's not as simple as taking the value of the aircraft and saying, well, these aircraft were insured, therefore this is the number. It gets more complicated than that. Is it because some policies simply don't apply at times of war, then? Well,
of course, there's a sanctions regime as well in terms of what you're allowed to cover and what you're not allowed to cover, because if your insurance is deemed to be supporting Russia, you have to cancel it straight away. And, of course, that will be a discussion because, arguably, the beneficiaries of our insurance policies are actually mostly non-Russian owners of these planes that happen to be leased to Aeroflot and other airlines. So those kinds of issues need to be worked through. There is a right of termination in most insurance policies related to war events. So unless you've bought a war cover, you may not be covered for that kind of event.
Is there any parallel with any period of history here? I mean, I'm thinking about the immediate aftermath of 9/11, where it seemed for a period that perhaps aviation, planes wouldn't be able to fly because there wasn't any insurance to cover it, perhaps, and governments were forced to temporarily step in. Is there any sort of parallel with that period?
Well, some, and so actually the industry is pretty good at adapting to these changeable events. It's the whole purpose of insurance is to take risk off our customers' balance sheet and take it on to our own. What's I think a bit different here is sanctions policy, because that is more coordinated than it's ever been. There were no sanctions post 9/11, certainly not in the immediate aftermath of 9/11. And of course, it's important that different jurisdictions manage these in a coordinated way, because otherwise gaps in risk and coverage occur. So we've been spending quite a lot of time on that issue.
Can I ask you about something completely different? And that is, we're sitting here in the City of London, and your business occupies a really iconic building in the City of London, designed by, very famous architects, and a real piece of architecture you can pick out, certainly from a distance. Are you planning to stay in that building? We understand that you're negotiating with landlords at the moment, and it's a beautiful thing. We're showing pictures of it now. Are you planning to stay there?
Well, we'd like to stay there. Clearly, we want to drive a hard bargain with our landlords, so it's unsurprising that there would be noise out there. There's a break in the lease in 2026, yes, 2026, which I think would be too soon for us to move out, and so the focus is really on 2031, which would be the next break. I'm hoping we'll reach agreement with our landlord actually in the next few weeks, and that we'll have an outcome that allows us to stay.
So we'll look for agreement there then in the next few weeks. There's been protest activity outside your building, Extinction Rebellion, very active in the City of London. Are they, they're asking you to withdraw insurance from certain parts of the fossil fuel industry, but you've already made some moves in that regard. What's the latest?
Well, I think we've got to go through a transition, and our job is to support our customers going through that transition. We need it to be urgent, but it needs to be orderly as well. And so we're trying to avoid cliff edges for our customers, but we absolutely recognise and we've made commitments to getting to net zero by 2050. And to the point you've already made, we've made some guidance to the market about not underwriting new thermal coal projects, for instance.
Okay.